All right, my name is Dennis Deloach. I want to welcome you to the Uncle Jim Effect podcast. This is episode number 55, and I cannot believe that I am sitting in the presence of greatness. Uh, this man is somebody that I've watched from afar since I was back in college and a little later. Butch Reynolds, what an honor it is for me to meet you. And I'm so excited for my subscribers to hear about your story. Welcome to the podcast.
Doc, thanks for having me here. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't say this lightly. I've just met you, but I feel like we're good friends because I've watched you from afar. And I don't know that I've ever met someone in my life that has been more of a type of person I want to be. And that's from every standpoint I can think of. Phenomenal world class athlete, even a better person from the outside, a family man, a man that has been through literally hell and kept his dignity and character. I just think when I think of the word man, basically you come to mind to me. So thank you for that. And I can't wait for the listeners to get to know you a little better.
Well, Doc, first of all, thank you. I'm very humble. I mean, I think it's all because of the strength of God. And I know it is. He has shown me many, many times over his presence. And I would be blind, crazy, not to pay attention that his power of my strength, his power of my ability to not give up, and his power for me to always do my best. And that's what I try to let him lead the way. Sometimes it's hard to let him lead the way because we want to get in the middle. But every time I let him lead the way, is he never fails.
Wow, that is so true. And again, I can't wait to dive deeper into this. So first of all, I want to talk about this 30 for 30, the ESPN documentary series that I just love those. Those to me are some of the greatest stories ever told. Obviously, being a sports fan, I love it from that aspect, but more importantly is the people behind it and the lessons we can learn, whether you're an athlete, sports fan or not. And this last one that we saw, false positive, that came out a week or two ago,
Mhm.
is by far the best one I've seen. It hit me the most. What's been the reaction since that was released a couple of weeks ago? I can't imagine. What's that look like for you?
Man, it's a first of all, it's a story that it has a lot of tragic for me in it. That was one of the hardest part of my life, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of things were still not told in the documentary that I had to go through, but the the response I received from my little circle per se, like that can call me or text me, I say about 500 people reached out like that, and of the 500 per se, I say it was like, man, you have me in tears, or man, your strength, you're so strong, or man, I just didn't know. I mean, and those are the three real responses that I received from a lot of people, media, a lot of friends, a lot of family, a lot of people I didn't know, and just out and about. It's been that way, but the the people who I needed to speak to or needed to respond, I didn't hear from them, which is the federations.
Yeah.
Um, I think they gonna put their heels in the ground a little bit deeper and try to deny me full exoneration again.
Well, and that is so well said. And again, I'm not ashamed to admit it. We were talking off screen that as we get older, you get more emotional. But both my wife and I, as we watched it, were in tears. And I asked my wife, I said, "What would you like me to ask Butch? What would you like
Mhm.
to know?" She
Right,
says, "Man, how did he get through that?"
right. Like I said, I not think I know God. There's no question about it. All thumbs up, hands up. He just when you believe in Him and you keep the faith, which is hard. I'm not going to sit here and say that keeping this faith and going through that process was easy. No, but I think that He made it as hard as He felt that I can handle, And I kept that in mind. And I kept in mind that, I set a world record. I kept in mind that, I set a world record that stood for 20 years. That was a defeat. I mean, that put me in a whole different atmosphere when it comes to track and field, the legacy, when it comes to achieving a goal, period. And to achieve that and then to experience that the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, you think that you learn a lot. And I learned a lot by being a world record holder. I learned a lot by being the fastest man in the world. But I learned so much more, not just about being the best in the world, but going through the adversity, going through the false accusation in front of the world, being falsely accused of taking steroids and spending a 2-year suspension, another year because of you went to the Supreme Court. To experience that was so much more of a eye opener to who I am and well, in God's presence in my life. I knew His presence when I set that world record. I mean, 43.29 seconds. I mean, that shocked me. you know, so let alone anyone else. So I can only imagine that piece. But the real growth was the false accusation. And to tell your wife that I'll be honest with her is God. Now I can say, Hebrews 11th chapter, talks about faith, and that's definitely important from the spiritual side. And and my father-in-law, he was when I met him for 8 years, he was battling cancer, and he was in a coma for 3 months before he came out. And I was able to talk to him those 8 months. I didn't know him before the coma, and I was, have those deep conversations with him.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he told me was, Butch, I said, you know what? I try to motivate people. I try to help people. I said, I've been through a lot, and I wanted to let them know, how to hang in there, how to hold on. I know God. You told me about God. I know God. But sometimes when people going through things, they can't see God. They can't feel God yet. I said, so I have to tell them something until they are able to understand God and what He can do. Because when you say God to some people, yes, I got you. Some people you got to tell them, stay strong and keep it moving. When you're going through adversity, you're going through things because as long as you stay strong, God can work with you. And that's the key. As long as you keep staying strong, keep it moving, God can work with
Wow, that there's so much truth and power behind that, and yet the pain that it takes to get through that. So that statement you made is so true, but wow, the adversity and pain behind that statement specifically in your life. I mean, all of us go through our own, Butch Reynolds moment, but what
you.
you did was phenomenal, and to not give up, that is amazing. And we're talking about a guy here. I didn't go into in the beginning. And what amazes me about you, Butch, is, I mean, okay, let's talk about accomplishments. I mean, here's a guy who was, as you said, the fastest man in the world for a long period of time. And people don't realize when you set that record, it was by at least a half a second or more that
Right.
it stood for about 20 years. And in the 400-meter race, which is considered the hardest race of any of them, the one that gets you nearest death,
Mhm.
you won that by in that world over half a second is a mile, and
Mhm.
to set that. So that's one gold medalist, silver medalist, world champion. Your college coach said the greatest track athlete he's ever seen.
Mhm.
And on top of that, that's not even the most impressive thing about you in my book. It's this, what you just said. As impressive as that is, I mean, you're a one of a kind out of billions of people. But man, what you went through, the dignity you showed, how you got through that, the family you had, and what you're doing now in that foundation, that to me, if at all possible, supersedes being the fastest man in the world, if that's possible.
I said, when I went through adversity, God lies sees for greater opportunities. And I was like, man, I'm a world record holder. What kind of seeds He gonna lie this time? So I'm just like, I did. It keeps me excited to keep trying, to keep going, and and it must be worth it because you got to keep fighting. It's been 30, 34 years, and I have to still keep fighting to clear that name. And,
Yeah.
and I thought that after this documentary, they approached me with more like, Butch, let's put this behind us.
Yeah.
Let's move this on. And it was almost the total opposite. So
Yeah. Darkness does not like to have light shined on it. And
right, right.
I can tell you that in my world and everybody's world that I know of, you were fully exonerated, and the spotlight went from you falsely to them, and they
Okay.
don't like that. And so, man, keep your head high. You've done things that your example is. I believe in my heart, if it hasn't already, it'll affect millions of people for the better. And you said something a minute ago that you're excited to see what God has for you next. Don't you think God smiles on you when He gives you that type of adversity and you come through it still with a good attitude? He's like, oh, okay, let's go. I've got some other great things for you. You've proven the point.
I do feel that way. I just pray that um, my decisions are His decisions
Yeah.
moving forward. I don't want to put Butch in the middle. I want to keep him forward. I want to set that world record. And of course, He gave me the blessings to do it. That's what I think. Now, he's preparing me for whatever it is. So I'm just trying to be patient and prepare myself to move forward with positive thoughts, love, and with smartness. With
Yeah.
smartness.
Well, and what you just said, though, I think is amazing because you were given a lot of God-given potential and ability, but you're also recognized as one of the hardest workers around. This Brooks Johnson, who was the Olympic coach, made a comment or a quote in that documentary. I love it. He says, Butch excelled because he was willing to hurt. Pain wasn't an alien concept for him. He made it look easy, but it wasn't easy. So I talk a little bit about, yes, you were given a tremendous amount of God-given ability to run, but just because a lot of people look on the outside, say, oh, he was born fast. It came easy to him. Man, the amount of work and pain behind what you accomplished. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, what I do now, I'm a professional coach. I train kids how to run faster. I train kids how to compete. And it's funny though, because the last 3 or 4 years, it's been a more of a psychological approach with these kids. So, but I feel like that my preparation is very important. So I try to prepare as well, whatever it is I'm doing in life now. But when I ran, I tried to prepare, and how I prepared is how I trained, how I ate. What did I do from day to day is how I prepared, and the mindset goes along with that process. Is like I had to not only prepare what I ate, compare the conditioning of heart, but you have to prepare the mind, and sometimes you have to make decisions. And sometimes you have to make sacrifices, and the sacrifices you have to make is not what you will want. That's the hardest part. You got to be strong. Yeah, you got to be strong, but in order to be strong, you might have to make a sacrifice in there to keep you strong. Are you willing to make those sacrifices? Well, if I had certain things in my life, I probably wouldn't have made certain sacrifices that I made. But since I didn't have certain things in my life at the time, I think I made those sacrifices. And I think God knew that, I didn't need to have those things in my life at the time because He knew I would make those sacrifices. So I think that's some of the things that it goes with being the best, is sacrifice.
Well, and that is such a good point. And I want to go back a little bit and talk about the life you thought was coming for you, that you were already in the middle of. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you were really kind of the original Nike guy, the guy that with the first big track endorsement, the big deal. I mean, you in the documentary talks about you were getting about 75,000 per race.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty good money for every 45 seconds. or actually 43.29 seconds. The endorsements and the notoriety, that was there. And then I want to read what the editor, I mean, the director, Ismail Al-Amin, I hope I said that right, the 30 for 30, what he said in the beginning, he said, False Positive is a film about finding the strength to live a different life from the one you worked so hard and sacrificed so much for. And so at that stage, what we just said, first Nike endorsement guy, first athlete the world knows, big money, all the fame in the world. And then they hit you with this lie and this ridiculous accusation. And then life changes for you. And yet now the blessings you've seen in your life as a result of that, how do people listening to this that are obviously not going through something at that level, but they're going through a divorce or a bankruptcy, lost a child or a spouse, and they're making adjustments in their life. It's not the life they thought. What's the best advice you have for them and how to get through it?
I would say this. Everybody goes through a process. You got to let yourself go through a process. I call it defy grief. And it starts with like being mad, being upset. Then it goes to things like being depressed. Then it goes to things like you want to blame certain things. But the last one, and the most important one for time's sake, is acceptance. Sometimes you have to get to a point where you accept what happened. Whatever it is, you have to accept what happened. And it's harder to accept it when it's not your fault.
Yeah.
When it's not your fault, it's hard to accept. I'm in a car accident and I got my leg broken, but it's not my fault. He was drinking. She was drinking. Why did I got to pay for this?
Yeah.
That's the hardest ones to accept when it's not your fault. When it is your fault, it's easier to accept. Okay, I got to take responsibility. It might be hard, but you can accept it. But when it's not your fault. So I would tell those who it's not your fault to accept it so you can move on. Because if you don't accept it, that's the last one, and that's God. When you accept it, that is God. He's going to show you so much more because I didn't want to let that fight go. I'm telling you by experience. I'm not telling you because that I'm just reading a book or reading a psychology book and I'm studying that way. No, I'm telling you because I fought. How strong I am. I fought for 10 years. I should have accepted it when in 1990 when they said it. But no, I wasn't going to accept it like that because I didn't understand the spirituality of it. I didn't understand the growth out of it. I had to go through those stages. I think that even then, if I knew what I know now, you still got to go through those stages because that's the stages you're going to go through. That's a normal person. You're going to go through the upset, the hate, the depressed. You're going to go through the stages, but you cannot stay at the depressed stage. You cannot stay at the hateful stage. You cannot stay at those, stages, processes. You got to keep moving to the last one. And when I said before, and I accepted it when I asked God, okay, now I got to accept this. And then that's when Stephanie, Janaya, and my kids, they came into my life. And when they came into my world, I was like, I wasn't able to think about what happened no more. What happened no more was the past. She didn't know, my daughter didn't know, and my son didn't know. Nobody knew. So I was not around people who cared about the past. And I got through it.
That if you're ever going to rewind part of a podcast and listen to again, please do that. The last several minutes, what Butch just said is that will change your life. Two things about what you just said. Number one, your family's beautiful, man. That's a beautiful family you've got. And number two, it just came to me. Had you not gone through this adversity, do you think you would have been prepared to meet them and to then join together as a family? Or do you think maybe your mind would have been on your accomplishments and doing those things. Do you think God had a hand in that, or how did that work for you?
Well, I was happily married before. We shared a kid together, but we lost it. 5 hours after he was
Mm.
born, he came early, so I experienced that already, and you know, we had to go our separate ways, not because of us, really because of all that was transpiring. This is when I was talking about the sacrifice earlier.
Yeah,
I didn't want to sacrifice that, you know, but in order for me to stay strong and to fight, I had to sacrifice. We're friends, thank God to that. We're friends, but those are the kind of things that people might not know. And, when they talk about losing a kid, I've been there. Talk about divorce, I've been there. Talk about bankruptcy, I've been there. Talk about losing a house, I've been there. Talking about moving, I've been there. Okay, it's nothing that I have not been through with money, without money. I've been there.
yeah. Well, and that to me is what God given potential is about, because it's easy when the world beats you down in all those areas you've talked about. And I've shared a lot of those similar experiences with you, and I'm sure most of these people have.
Right,
And as the world beats you down, that's a given. What's not a given is how you react to it.
right,
And that's what I'm so excited to have you on here for, Butch, is because the way you reacted to everything that was thrown at you is just an unbelievable example to me. And I just would, I mean, if we can bottle what you did and use that as an example for the rest of us people to get through tragedy, that's the whole point of this conversation. People should not give up. There's still hope and
right.
all. I want to talk a little bit about your family. I've got to ask you about your dad, man. I loved him on the show. That guy, he was a typical dad. I saw on there in the background they had a paper and it was talking about what a great athlete you were, and it talked about when you were playing pee wee football and you came home, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "Dad, look, did you see that big run I had? You must have been a running back or a quarterback or something." And he basically said something to the effect of, "Hey, you have some pretty good linemen blocking in front of you. Don't forget about those guys. Everybody likes a pat on the back." And I thought, that's the kind of dad that us boys needed, because they always put you in your place. But man, he was so proud of you, and I remember him talking on that about when you ended up getting the silver medal in the Olympics, and he said, "Yeah, Butch was behind, I swear, 50 yards and came back to win it." Tell me a little bit about him. Maybe something we don't know about him, but what a great man he sure seemed to be.
Yeah, my dad had a vision. He was an athlete. He was a real good athlete, and he knew that he wasn't strong academically as he would like to be. So he put us in private schools. So he made a transition in my ninth grade year. So my ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th, I went to private school.
Wow.
That was a culture shock, first of
Mhm.
all. So the first 2 years, I didn't do too good. It was a challenge.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be there. All my friends went to the public high school, and
Mhm.
I thought I want to be this big football star, this big track star, this big basketball star. This school wasn't about athletics, like that. It was about academics, more or less. So he forced that upon us, and I had to make a transition. That's why I talk about life transition. It was either make a transition or move on, and I made the transition to accept my new surroundings, to accept my new environment. And it was definitely a new environment, except having new friends, accept that type of life. And uh, it really helped when I moved on in life to to start accepting different environments. And the more I was able to accept different environments, the more I was able to grow. And that started that growth right there, because I became easy with people. I understood how to deal with all types of people at that time.
Yeah.
Was no one a stranger to me. I dealt with people before on different levels.
Yeah.
So it gave me confidence. It gave me more of a self-esteem builder, of
Yeah.
course. And I always wanted to share that. I never wanted to bottle it up. Always wanted to see my dad. my mom, my sister have those experiences, and it's hard for them to have those experiences when it's my eyes seeing it.
Yeah.
So I had to realize that piece. No matter what I was going back, they could never understand or see what I was seeing. And I
Yep.
was trying to share them my experiences, but it was a challenge with friends and family who I was looking at the world. I was talking to kings, queens. I was sitting down talking to presidents of the United States. I sat down and talked to Clinton and Ronald Reagan like you would not believe. And believe it or not, I had a good conversation with Ronald Ronald Reagan, you know what I'm saying? And it was just amazing the life I was living. And then for that all that energy, to come to all. And I remember Wilma Rudolph was sitting on an event one time in '88. She said, she looked at me and said, "Baby," she said, "you're gonna be the legend. You wait and see." And I didn't know what she was really. I mean, I knew what a legend was, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm so far from a legend. I'm not even thinking a legend. I'm trying to win gold medal. You know what I'm saying? And but to be a legend, you have to go through something. To be a legend, you have to go through something. I
Yeah.
think. And she went through polio. I mean, and she had to learn how to walk. And then she went out there and won 2 gold medals in 2 different Olympics. I mean, that was, and then she had pneumonia on top of that she
Yeah.
had to deal with after polio. So you look at that story and you look at what she had to go through. Jesse Owens, what he had to go through. I
Yeah.
mean, 1936 as a black man alone in the United States alone was tough.
Yep.
Gold medals or not, okay? And then how he stood, with the regime of Hitler at the time, and how he showed how they're not as strong as they thought they were, and one man showed that. And when
Yeah.
somebody can show the vulnerability, it's like Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson. When you can show that David and Goliath kind of a deal, then it makes an impression on people's mind. So it's like me with the world governing body, the David and Goliath. I am nowhere near the biggest organization as the world governing body. For them to
Mhm.
put their fingers on me for this long with no found evidence is unheard of. And that's what I'm trying to fight right there, that type of battle. And I know it, and that's why I gotta work with God and pray that He gives people with me that can help me, make this difference or make this a wrong right.
Yeah. Well, and after watching that 30 for 30 and seeing, I'm not talking overwhelming. That's not even a good word. The, yeah, overwhelming evidence. I mean, dozens of things that showed that they were absolutely wrong and they just would not stop. I mean, every attorney, every test, all the result, everything. There was not one thing they had other than that they made a mistake and they would not back off of it.
That's it.
Oh, I mean, and the pride that is, and that's what they displayed. But you're displaying, I trusted in God, even though you were getting wronged. And it's amazing to me. You and I are, in our 60s or close to it, and people don't realize what the world was like back then. And I don't know. I was a white kid that grew up in a little farming town, but Jesse Owens, it was amazing. Not only as a black man, like you said in the U.S. back then, how tough it was, but then he went to the heart of the beast. I mean, he went to Berlin in front of Hitler and embarrassed him. And yet the U.S. was so proud of Jesse. And then he got home and they treated him poorly again.
Yep.
And that, people don't realize that now. And I mean, we still have issues now, but
Right.
man, back then it was horrible. Your dad came from Selma.
Yeah.
And then to end up in Akron. And then what he went from that to his son going to a private school,
Right.
speaking with presidents. I mean, you look at what your dad did, and man, that's amazing. That is amazing. That level to where he was such an example to you, and I see where you get it now. Tell us a little bit about your mom. We didn't hear much about her, and other than she was a caregiver, but what was she like?
Oh man. You're looking back at it, right? You that's when you grow, when you can look back and see exactly what person had the effect and what they do, who was the true leader, who was the true motivator, who left those nuggets all the time. And my mom was very influential in that. She took care of her boys and her daughter. Don't get me wrong, but she took care of her boys, and she also was able to, like, when it comes to athletics, she was the one who really was like, you know, uh, you know, uh, she was the aggressive one, believe it or not. Okay, she was the one that was more of what's the word I'm looking for? She was the one who really set the mindset up.
Yeah.
My dad just like, just do it. He just take you and just do it. My mom is the one who kind of gets you mentally ready to do it. You know, she kind of coached you in her way, and it always worked, especially for me. It worked. Jeff too, my brother as well.
Yeah.
It worked for us. And then she taught us a lot about, you know, how to clean, cook, how to, wash. She did all that stuff. We was very independent young man. Um, she was a caregiver. Period.
Yeah. Every strong man I've seen has got a good mama behind him, no question. No question. You mentioned your brother Jeff. I thought one of the coolest things on that documentary was when you set the world record. I mean, the next thing I knew, it seemed like one of the first guys there was your brother Jeff hugging you. And I thought, man, that says more than anything I need to know about the bond. And so talk a little bit about Jeff and what that moment was like sharing that with him.
Yeah, Jeff and I was very competitive. Of course, you can see that. And the
Yeah.
older we got, the more competitive we got. Okay. We went to a junior college together, and he wanted to go to Kansas State, and I was trying to get him to come to Ohio State with me, but I lost out on that one. He wanted to have that his own identity finally,
Yeah.
and he went and did that, and he was very successful at Kansas State. He was a Big 12 conference championship many times over down there. And Jeff got robbed in the Olympic trials, meaning that Jeff changed the rules. I think the Reynolds changed rules for some reason in the sport. But, Jeff had a 44.98, and he didn't make it to the finals in the 1988 Olympic trials. But we had two people in the finals with a 45 in there, 45.2 and a 45.3. Okay. And there's no way that he shouldn't have been in that finals. And to be in the finals, you have opportunity to be in top six, which that's the kind of guy he is. He gonna fight enough to be in that top, in somewhere in that area. And he could have been on the relay with me that year, and see, but then the following season, they changed the rules. They go on with the first two fastest time in the next four fastest times after that. If you win your heat, those two, but then the next four fastest times go. So it keeps it more even instead of doing it the way they had it and they made a mistake.
Just to see that's what family's about to me. I mean, as competitive as he is, and brothers are,
Right.
you beat each other to death until someone else steps in.
Right.
But to see that the joy and pride he had in you at that moment, it was just so cool to see him just hugging you and was so grateful that you had set that world record. That just really hit me.
Well, you know what though? You think about it. When they told the world I tested positive, Jeff took heat on that too.
Yeah.
Not only he took heat, but my family members took heat. My friends took heat. Everybody who was associated with me took heat, and I realized that, and I respect that. And that's another thing that it pisses me off.
Yeah.
That is not what they just didn't hurt me. They hurt a lot of people, and I think they didn't think that who they was hurting. I think they didn't think that what I was made of.
Mm-hmm.
I think they think that, and I'm going to change the sport. It's going to be better. I'm not doing this to be selfish. I'm not going to be doing this to, uh, 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 you know, uh, make a campaign. Don't go to Olympics. No, I'm not trying to do this. but I'm going to change this sport. I'm going to change the way they treat us. And even though the athletes don't understand yet, that's fine. Because I realized something. I said, the 6-day Olympic boys, they knew this. They knew this.
Yeah.
And they tried to, but even though I was trying to get close to them, and I did, but I only had a year and a half in it. If I had more time in it, I would have got that. I would have got them more understanding and more with the process because, you know, not trying to be mean, but I don't think Carl Lewis cared. I ain't trying to be mean. I don't think Michael Johnson cared, and if you don't get these guys who like the Jesse Owens, like before he passed away, into the sport, we're missing it, and they're not in the sport. So I'm going to bring a lot of people that's not in the sport because of the drug issue, because of the leadership, because of the competence, and because of the way they've been treated. I'm in the category of how they've been treating you. I'm a world record holder. I'm an Olympic gold medalist. And you don't call me, you don't invite me. You don't invite me to nothing. So I can imagine how you treat people who don't have that.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. And that's not right because we're 60 years old, but we're not dead.
Not yet.
Right. So why treat, your gold medals, your world record holders like they don't exist? And we gave you, some of our best. We represented our country through you.
Yep.
We just didn't give you. We represented our country. So.
Well, and I think the reason they don't contact you is I don't care what they say, that shame they have of knowing what they did was absolutely wrong, and to step up and say, hey, we were wrong.
Right.
We can't do anything, but we were wrong. I just that to me, and that goes along with the next question I got. So anytime in life when we go through something tough, I've seen it in my life, you've seen it in your life. Talk a little bit about who you found out your friends are in that moment. One of the things that bothered me a little bit was in that film, the other athletes. I've always been on team sports, and I don't care who you are. If you're on my team, you're my brother, and we do anything for you. It seemed like maybe because track is more individual, but it seemed like they stepped back and left you out there hanging. But what was that like for you? I mean, obviously you found out who your friends were, but talk a little bit about that maybe and how you dealt with that.
Sometimes you got to say, God forgive those who they don't know what they do.
Yeah.
So I kind of looked at it like that. They don't know what they're doing. And God forgive them for that. The people who knew what they were doing was the Federation.
Yeah.
And the Federation is the one who should have represented me and not let me stand alone. You represent me. That's why I run. And that's why I pay my dues to you to allow me to have, let me be able to run. And you failed me on many, many occasions. This is my governing body of USA Track and Field. Okay. And they failed the athletes there as well. They wanted me and they did a good job I like the athletes against me and I'm against the athletes. That's how you deter when you're wrong. And they're good at that.
Yeah.
They were the ones who was wrong. You are my agent. Agent represent your athletes. You must represent everybody on that Olympic trial team. And then when I left you, it's supposed to go to the United States Olympic Committee. The United States Olympic Committee, now you're my agent. Now you represent my integrity and represent what I stand for. The same thing you stand for at representing the Olympics brand. I stand for the same principles as you do for the Olympic brand. But now all of a sudden, now I'm Olympian. I'm a world record holder. You gave me athlete of the century, and now I don't meet your criteria as an Olympian. I don't meet your criteria as a world record holder. What happened to my integrity? What happened to my ability to, state my case? And when they didn't give me that piece, and all athletes, they didn't see that for some reason, and the federation didn't want them to see it. But I don't care who you are. If I'm one of those athletes and I go to Supreme Court of the United States and I'm saying to myself, I'm about to run this guy here. This guy went to Supreme Court of the United States and won. Oh, hey, something's going on here.
Yep.
I'm changing my deliverance a little bit more now. I said, I don't care what they say, but Butch Reynolds went to Supreme Court, and if 9 justices of the U.S. Supreme Court said that he didn't do this, what's the problem? No, I'm not going. I'm not going to run. I'm with Butch.
Yep.
But they didn't see it that way. They still didn't see it that way, and that's where you say God forgive them for they not know what they do. Well, they knew that piece now. Now you know, and now you know. So where's the forgiveness coming at now, per se? Yeah, I'm just kind of keeping it to the level of what I forgave you. Now you get to the point, and now you still are not understanding. With the Supreme Court, it was a hard moment for me because, I went to Supreme Court in 1992, and I think in 1991 or two, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the Fitness Council of the United States of America, and he was a known steroid. I said, here this man here is being celebrated in being in fitness, and he took steroids. Here I am, lost my scholarship. Lost all my endorsements, about to lose my house, and I didn't do it. What's the take on steroids now? I'm confused now. What's the take on it? Is it going to celebrate it, or are we going to make a penalty for it? I'm all for both. I'm all for even playing field. Let's take the steroids out. Let's not do it. I can look at all of this. Lance Armstrong. He didn't miss a beat. Yeah, I did it. You got caught up, whatever. But to me, he ain't missed a beat. Those guys don't. My 20 years was tough.
Yeah.
My 20 years.
Those are great examples I hadn't really even thought of. And with Schwarzenegger and Lance, that's amazing how that happened. And what's amazing, in my opinion, you look at the Olympic Committee and you look at the governing body at that time, and then there's only one standing, in my opinion, because with all due respect, the Olympic Committee has had its moments of scandal. The governing bodies you talk about have had their moments of scandal. The government with the wishy-washy about steroids. But to me, Butch Reynolds is still standing and is the only consistent thing. From day one, you've said, I didn't do it. And that's never changed. And yet, all of that crap that goes on around behind the scenes is exactly that. And yet here you are still standing talking about forgive them and God's got a plan for me. And how do I help other people, including kids? So, to me, the light is shining and obvious on who comes out of this with respect and dignity and character, and that's you. And I just can't imagine what you went through. And I know that the experience you had, Butch, has affected millions of people and given them hope. And I just don't think, maybe not until we're in heaven, are you going to realize when God says, hey, everybody who was affected by Butch, get in this auditorium, and it's going to be the biggest stadium that's ever been in existence. And then I think maybe then you get to see, wow, all the stuff I went through, I affected each of these people in some manner. And I believe that. I think literally millions of people that are going to be affected positively for what you did. And I just can't think. I can personally tell you, in my life and my family that benefited by me being a better man just because of what you went through. And I'm grateful for that. I just want you to know that.
No, Doc, I appreciate it. Seriously, it comes right from God, and I appreciate it. And I'm humble. All praise goes to Him. You know that. So I
Yeah,
thank you, though.
I do. Okay, we're winding this down. Butch, please, we've got a lot of subscribers, and I know that there's people in tears. There's people that would like to reach out to you. What's the best way to do that? I know you do coaching,
Right, right.
just on all levels. And man, if people are listening and there's any way you can get a hold of this guy to have him affect your life, your business, your family, your children, whatever that is, please reach out. But Butch, how can they do that?
I try to make it very easy, like life. It's ButchReynolds.com. You go to ButchReynolds.com, and all my social media will be there. And any message you want to leave from me, you can do it there as well.
Okay, ButchReynolds.com. Well, and again, from my heart to yours, brother, I love you. I cannot believe what you've done. Thank you for taking this time.
Thank you.
Changed my life once again, and I hope that this is the beginning of a great friendship moving forward. I'm here for anything you need from me.
I appreciate it.
I would do anything for you with what you've done and what you've been through. The rest of us need to step up and help you and do what we can. Thank you, and God bless you, Butch.
God bless you. Thank you.
You're a good man. I'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.